much. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry I went so over, but thanks very much.
No, great. Yeah, awesome. Great job, Preston. Holy, wow. Yeah, very inspiring. Yeah, I was enthralled the entire time. So being the host, I get to do a Q&A first, but we actually have to cut it off at 1 o'clock, definitely. So I won't take up any questions, but I actually do want to know, Preston, I'm an experiencer myself, and I think what's really fascinating about what you showed about these contact events is the myriad different ways the beings interact with humans. It's just constantly, yet there's this kind of consistent pattern, like or consistent themes, I guess. Yet the kind of almost like a game, the different ways, seeing a mantid walk through the street, or having like these are just, there's so much variety. It's actually kind of fascinating, and I fit into that. My contact events don't match other people's types of contact events. So I privately, Preston, would I be able to email you, kind of questions about stuff that I've experienced, and wondering if you've seen other people have these type of experiences as well too?
Yeah, of course. My email, you can reach it through my website, which is,
right.
Just Google my name, will take you there, or it's prestonufo@gmail.com. Pretty easy to remember. But yeah, right. I've heard it all. I mean, people have had contact through the telephone. Not kidding. I've got a dozen cases. Bud Hopkins had a case. Raymond Fowler.
Right.
Contact comes in all different forms.
Yeah. Great. So let's open it up. So anybody who has any questions for Preston, please go ahead.
I just wanted to say, Preston, you've answered a question I've had for a long time. Just in your talk, you were mentioning that one person there was light behind them, so they couldn't see the face. I've always called my beings light beings because I couldn't see their face. All I could see was light. And now I'm thinking that maybe that's what happened to me, that there was a light behind the being, because I've never been able to see what kind of being it was. So thank you for that.
Yeah, if I could just interject real quickly. I think sometimes they will hide their face from people. This is pure speculation on my part, but I've heard it over and over again where people see everything, but they can't focus on the face. I think this is to reduce the fear factor.
Right. Really interesting talk. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm sure people have questions, so I'm going to be quiet too.
I would like to talk. I just want to say that
Patricia, can you speak closer to your microphone? Your sound very far away.
Is this better?
That's better. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to say that I'm not too sure what it is that has been visiting me, doing different kinds of things that are very unusual. I have had.
Uh-oh, the ET's got her. She's paralyzed.
Cut her off, yeah. Yeah, she's frozen in time, yeah.
Yeah, some other people have said that they're having troubles today as well with Wi-Fi and different things. I've been having a little conversation with someone who's having some troubles. Patricia, so somebody else come on, please.
She's back.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, Patricia, go ahead.
Did you hear anything that I said?
You're having something about, you can start from the beginning.
Okay, that's weird. Ever since I was a little girl, I've had kind of like visions, visits, weird experiences, like pink and purple kittens in my shed. I mean, I tell my mom looks at me like I'm crazy, but this is not something that was consistent, on and off all my life. I've had weird dreams that have came true, something talking to me in my dreams, visions. I seen Jesus one time in a park, and also something visualized in my bedroom one night. It isn't like it just seems to me like something is constantly reminding me that I'm here. There's more to what you think is in life, is what I can only gather from all my experiences, that there is some other kind of dimension around us, and I get visions or little information contact, but I don't ever remember being in a spaceship or actually having aliens. I just wondering aliens in themselves, what we're talking about, possibly from a different dimension, just
Yeah,
from what I've experienced,
I,
right?
I can absolutely, I would love to.
When I
Yeah.
was pregnant with my last child, I was 38 years old. When they did ultrasound around my, the baby, this I can't remember what you call the, anyways, there was many, many, many other little embryos. And my doctor said to me when he was looking at ultrasound, and I'm seeing it on the screen too, have you been taking fertility drugs? And I go, no, not at all. And then that was the end of it. He never asked me any, and I asked, well, what are those? What? Because I didn't know. I thought very strange having all these embryos around the one, my baby, right? And nothing was ever explained to me about it. What could that possibly been? It felt like to me like it was protection of her because I had so much trouble having children. I don't know. That's just one of very strange stories that have happened to me in my whole life. So, of course, this UFO thing is of great interest to me because of all my experiences.
Yeah, I would love to just interject briefly on what you said,
Okay.
because I do think by and large, the UFO phenomena can be explained as extraterrestrial in the classic sense, beings like us from other planets. I think that explanation best fits the evidence. But I don't think all of this is necessarily extraterrestrial. Yes, extraterrestrials are interdimensional, as we are. All things are interdimensional. So I'm not sure it's useful to call them interdimensional beings because they've mastered that as a technology. And when someone's taken on board a UFO, it's very much like a near-death experience. They're essentially taken to another dimension. They're pulled out of time. But I do know that the UFO contact experience is far stranger than I think is even recognized within the UFO community. There are many different contact modalities. There's a large variety of interdimensional beings out there, spirits, shadow people, angels, demonic type spirits is probably true. I don't think UFO is demonic. I really looked into demonology before this. But people can have a wide variety. And yes, I have heard of people seeing religious figures, even on board UFOs. So they can put on little shows or screen memories or appear as a wide variety of animals, particularly with kids, everything from clowns to superheroes to giant rabbits to 3-foot-tall teddy bears. I've heard it all, Barbie dolls. So that could be part of what's going on here. But I do think it's important to recognize that not everything people is seeing is necessarily extraterrestrial. Because when a contactee also has, as a rule, ghost experiences. And that, a wide variety of spiritual beings are visiting us.
Yeah, okay, I agree with you. A lot of different varieties of beings or whatever have been visiting me. It's sporadic. It doesn't happen all the time or anything. It's just that through my life, I've had so many different unexplainable experiences where I actually have control over a dog that's way far away from me. I had mind contact with this dog I wanted it to lay down. I was about 30, 40 feet from it and I seen it and I thought it was adorable. And I thought, I wish you would just lay down until I got close enough to pet you. Next thing you know, the dog's laying down and I'm petting it. And I said to the owner, I said, does your dog always lay down like this? And he goes, it's never done it before.
Oh, don't even get me started on experiencers and animals. We'll talk for another hour. They all have very strong with animals.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just, my mind is awake to, I'm open. I have been since I'm a child, so I experience all this stuff, but it's very frustrating never knowing for sure what it is that's going on.
Yeah, it's connected to, it's all about consciousness and telepathy and awareness and our abilities to spiritually evolve.
Ian, you have a question there, Ian? Your microphone's muted. Oh, there you
Yeah,
go.
no, I've come on now. That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I want to say that was a great presentation, Preston. I've followed you and I've listened to you with interest when you've previously been on other shows, etc. And I'm so glad that you've been able to come to Vancouver UFO and deliver a presentation. The only regret is that it's that there were a whole lot more interesting cases that I wish you could have covered there, and you could have kept going. There was no time constraints as far as I was concerned. It was quality UFO encounters and alien encounters. Backed up as well, I have to say, by excellent illustrations. I really did enjoy those illustrations. Now, I just wanted to make everyone aware as well that you've got a YouTube channel which is regularly updated and carries good content. And the content, for example, that I found very interesting the other day that you posted was UFO investigators disease. And yes, I can certainly corroborate a lot of the things that you've said in that. I work with Linda Moulton Howe, and I help her with the Q&A on her weekly show. So, you know, and I also interview a lot of people with experiences, with their own experiences, etc. So I myself have got several very good cases and lots of other interesting cases that require so much more investigation. It's really good to see someone like yourself who takes fresh new cases, real life encounters, and brings them forward to the public. And so grateful that you've been able to do that for the community. That's so good. I did want to comment on a couple of your cases. I don't know if you're aware about you mentioned I think it was Charlene or someone in Louisiana who was chased by the spherical object.
Charmaine.
Yeah. Charmaine, wasn't it? Now, have you heard of the book, it's Abducted in the French Quarter by Alter and Chad Dillard?
Can't say that. No.
Yeah, that is a very interesting case. I know these two. I've spoken with these two authors, and it's let's say a little known case, but it ought to be better known. But that was in Louisiana as well, and it featured let's say a large orb or being coming from an orb. If you actually search for it, I think they've actually got a Facebook page called Abducted. That's ORB ducted in the French Quarter. And the other thing I wanted to say is about the Edwards case. That is fantastic, because I worked with you know, an experiencer who had and she's been on this show, Celestine Starr, and she had an experience with a reptilian where her husband, who was in security, was able to take her underneath the base and show her a live reptilian under Edwards. And when she said, "What is this? What on earth is this?" he said, "We are working with it." And that was, I believe, in the late 70s or early 80s. It amazed me as well that when you said the guy immediately put his fingers to his lips like this to say, "Don't talk," you know, didn't want to speak about it, and he hushed this other person up. Celestine always talks about whenever they were on the base, they had to just mime things because they could be listened into on the base in other parts. So that was, yeah. So many of the other cases, there were so many correlations. I got so many questions, but I won't hold the line for too long and let other people have a chance. But thank you, well done. That's an excellent presentation, and thank you, Jeff, for bringing Preston in.
Yeah, you got it.
Thanks. Yeah, I do know of other cases at Edwards involving ETs working with humans, so that's not unique.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I was wondering about the correlation between the orbs that are ET orbs, let's say, versus things that could be done. I kind of have a STEM background. I got pulled into sci stuff. It's a long story, but I'm kind of both sort of STEM and now a sci student, let's say. So I'm trying to learn about there are already these, you know, the 5 observables they talk about with UFOs. And I have a background where I worked with holography, and so I I know how to create sort of illusion type things. And there are these megawatt lasers that the military has. If you intersect a few of those, you can create, basically, you can get the atmosphere to burn. So you can create fireballs in space. And with the servo mechanisms, you can have them do all kinds of things that would essentially defy physics in terms of how they move around, like, instant acceleration, near instant acceleration and all that kind of stuff. So one of the things I was wondering is, from your studies of doing all, for so long, have you found other aspects of the orbs? And by the way, I have two, up until yesterday, I had one experience with an orb, and that was just before we had this horrific smoke incident here I'm in the Portland, Oregon area. It occurred briefly before that, and then the other one was just last night. My son and I both saw it. So first one, I didn't have any other witnesses other than myself, but last night we saw it very briefly. So I was wondering if you had any, like, if you talk about orbs, things like they do this or they do that we could rule out, like someone using intersecting lasers or something like that.
Yeah, I am aware that our military has technology that is far more advanced than a lot of people realize, and do have the ability to, the TR-3B is a good example. We have reverse engineered this technology. I've heard from good sources, people who are within the military industrial complex, that we are flying these craft around, and a portion of what people are seeing is us. And with all these drones coming out now, this is really complicating the field and making, I think, UFO investigating quite a bit more problematic and difficult. I hadn't heard of precisely the technology you're talking about. You obviously know quite a bit about it, more than I do. I'm not really a scientist, so it's hard for me to really comment too deeply on that, other than what I found with when people see orbs is it's part of what I would call a complex of experiences. And often a person will see an orb, and that's immediately followed by a full-on onboard experience or bedroom visitation. And many of these orbs are like in people's homes, in a place where you wouldn't presumably think the military could mimic something like that. I do know we have technology that looks through solid objects, technology to spy upon people in pretty much anywhere. Psychotronic type abilities where they can put voices in your head even. I don't know if that's true, but there's certainly a lot of buzz about this in the UFO community. Yeah, it's a scary time right now, because I'm not convinced that our secret governments have our best interests in mind. And
have you seen the same connection? I've done a little research, and I've seen a small amount, but you've been doing this a long time, between like orbs showing up and in an area where people can see it from high above, not like that you were talking about 200 feet away. That's usually you get some kind of you become an experience or whatever. But for the lights in the sky, prominently seen by a lot of people, and calamities.
Yeah, that does turn up. I have a case personally, the Northridge earthquake of 1994. There was multiple sightings of UFOs seen by various people all around the area. So that does turn up.
You have a book that has some good examples of that, maybe?
I don't have a book that specializes on that. No, that particular encounter was in my book, UFOs over Topanga Canyon. And I know there was another case involving the volcanic eruption of the Nevado del Ruiz volcano in Colombia, which isn't quite what you're talking about, but a UFO appeared before that and actually scooped people up and rescued them before this volcano erupted. That's in my book, Onboard UFO Encounters. There is definitely a connection there. They seem to know when earthquakes, they can measure, I guess the energy of volcanoes or earthquakes or what have you. They're constantly warning people about disasters. This is, again, their major message. I think they're very concerned about the future of our planet. So they're great geologists, they're excellent pilots, they're hypnotists. These guys are advanced. That is the one thing pretty much all experiencers that I've interviewed agree upon. These guys are super advanced. So it's hard for me to speak on orbs in particular, because I mean, I do have a lot of orb cases, but yeah, some are widely viewed, but some people will see a UFO and other people in that area don't see it. And they can be right next to them. When something like that happens, it's clear to me that this is not government, because UFOs have the ability to like cloak themselves from one person and show themselves to another, even if they're pretty much standing right next to each other.
Well, since Kevin has an orb experience and laser experience and holography experience, I have the same thing. Actually, I saw an orb and I shut it down with a laser. That was about almost 4 years ago now. I saw this bright orb and I knew it wasn't a star. So I took binoculars and looked at it. It was a translucent sphere with a very bright light in the center. So I knew it wasn't an airplane or a helicopter. So I just took the laser and made a circle around it to get some kind of reaction, but there was none. So I aimed the laser right at it. And the light retracted to itself, to the center, like, well, as if you were moving, running a movie backwards, you know. And then the whole thing changed into a slag-like form and into an egg-shaped, man-sized mass fell to the ground.
Wow.
And then a few minutes later, another orb appeared on the very same spot. And stupidly, or maybe, I don't know why I did the same thing. Now this one, when I circled it to get some reaction out of it, it just appeared. I didn't see it coming from anywhere. And so when I circled it, it took off, going straight north. And but the laser caught up with it anyway, and the same thing happened again. The
Well, do you
light,
have a question?
that there was nobody inside, unless if there were beings inside, they must have been ant size. There was no other mechanical thing seen inside except this very bright light in the center. And I didn't hear anything where this mass fell on somebody's house or garden or street. I didn't hear anything. What happened? There was no explosion. There was no noise. Yeah, very strange.
Yeah, very unusual. Haven't heard anything quite like that. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to ask a question for another question. I was really interested in your case about the guy who was offered the job in the secret government. He said, well, if you take this job, you can never get out. And he also at another time saw someone transformed into gray. Have you speculated if he had taken the job, would he be allowed to have like relationships within the base, and would they work at other bases as well? Like Area 51, could he get married on the base and be part of this community and have kids? This whole kind of huge, big black budget society in the secret space program. Is that basically what he was being invited into, do you think?
Yeah, I don't know if they allow relationships or not. We didn't really get into that, much as this was done through email correspondence. I'm still in touch with him, by the way. He's a very interesting gentleman who's really kept up with the field. And yeah, I talked to another guy who got out of the business but they erased his mind. That was the price.
Wow.
He forgot everything. They did mind control over him, and he had a severe car accident and a head injury, and that brought back these memories. So he's connected with quite a few people, but I was able to verify his employment. And I can just tell by the verbiage he uses that he's at the very least quite educated on these matters. Yeah, his story is pretty wild. It's definitely on the extreme end of what I would call the whistleblower type accounts.
But if you can never get out, it's almost like it's a lifelong contract. You're in this for life. And then if erasing your memory, that's a whole other level that I hadn't considered, that kind of ability. Say if someone's worked there for 10 years, they could erase all of that memory. That's an astonishing capability for humans to have.
Yeah, some other whistleblowers have talked about this. I did talk to one guy who scored extremely well on, aptitude tests in college, and was taken into the secret government and ended up working in an underground base in Alaska where they did reverse engineering, worked on sensing devices that could look through solid objects, biological warfare. And after a number of years, he got out of it. He said it was too intense because every single week they would have a debriefing session in which he was placed under sodium pentothal type drugs, and questioned on every aspect of his life, from going to the bathroom to brushing his teeth to everything. He said it was just far too grueling, and he's still under constant surveillance, and ended up taking a job within government at doing technological stuff, but not at a secret underground base.
Wow. But don't you think there's a large population of people who wouldn't have like normal, everyday working type relationships with men and women? Like wouldn't be a mixture of men and women, don't you think?
I honestly couldn't tell you. There's a very interesting book called Rachel's Eyes, which is definitely worth looking into. It talks about another whistleblower who worked at Area 51, and he was told the same thing. No relationships. The only reason they let him in was because he was a complete loner. But yeah, Helen Littrell, Rachel's Eyes. Great book. That's a little bit of a sleeper.
I can see the example you mentioned. The guy has to leave his girlfriend, but like I said, but once you're in, would be no relationships once you're in as well? I don't know.
I don't know. That would be tough.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm curious about that. Good presentation. Good slides.
Thank you.
SJ, you have your hand up there, SJ?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, hear you loud and clear.
Hi, thanks, Preston. This has been super interesting. I was curious if you've ever heard any cases regarding entities from around the region of the star Arcturus.
Yeah, I mean, I can't point specifically, but that does come up. I don't know if I've personally gotten cases, but if I were to go through my library and start digging up that word, I know it will come up a number of times, because people have, asked, where are you from? And Arcturus does come up. Orion comes up. Zeta Reticula is not just the Betty and Barney Hill case. That does come up. Often they're very coy about their origins and will say things like, you wouldn't understand, or it's not important, or we come from a place you don't know about yet, or they avoid it. But yeah, Arcturus has come up. Cygnus, Andromeda, but generally they don't tell where they're from. Orion, I would say, is the one that comes up the most.
Very cool. Well, I'm going to ask a question then about my contact events. So I have a plethora of them, and I've been presenting them to the group here. So I'm always really grateful for these people to be listening to my story. In one of them, the kind of significant one, I'm taken to, I call it the White Room. It is a white, dimensionless, massive, I've heard this before, that they have a kind of ability to, play with space. So you can walk into a room that, ends up being a lot larger than the walls look like it contains on the outside. So you have this like kind of very, very massive space. And then in it, they dissolved my body or something. I don't really fully understand the body part, but I got turned into an orb. And then I had this like really high consciousness experience. And then they kind of used that for something later on. But Susie Hansen was in this room in her book, Dual Soul Connection. And she was able, but it was for a different purpose. So she was able to see the thoughts were projected outwards, and they were things that she could see. And then I'm convinced this is the same room, like maybe not the exact room, but the type of room, I guess, the type of room that they would use in Linda Porter's contact events in Linda Moulton Howe's book, Glimpses into Another Reality, Volume 2, I think is where that is. And so they call it a soul transfer technology. And it's a room where that allows them to do that. Have you ever heard of a space like this? Have you ever come across something like this in your research?
Yes, not a lot, but it does turn up.
I'm all ears on your book that mentions it.
Oh gosh. Well, Inside UFOs, we didn't have that specifically, but he did talk about the room changing size,
right,
and being larger on the inside than the outside. In my book, Onboard UFO Encounters, a gentleman by the name of Jay Gardner described that as well, and that it was so large he couldn't see the walls, that there were no walls.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
so,
Onboard Encounters.
That's probably
what happened to him. What happened to him in that room?
His family was being placed in chairs and mentally examined, and that was pretty much the extent of it. He was quite young when that happened. He was like 5 years old, so he doesn't really remember. But I have read about this. I've looked into this in other cases. I've run across it myself, and it's I'm speculating here to a certain extent, but this is based on actual cases. But this is people being taken to what is essentially an interdimensional reality, kind of like the holodeck on Star Trek.
Yeah.
To a certain extent, they have this ability. This is why some researchers are like, wow, there's strong connections here to the near-death experience, because this is very much like what we would think of as the astral planes.
Yeah.
And they can take you there. And when you have an out-of-body experience, your body will dissolve and you will become an orb of light, often if you do this enough. I've looked very much deeply into out-of-body experiences and had many of them myself.
Whoa.
Cool. So that is definitely, I think, connected to this. And they can pull you out of your body and pull you into these realms and show you all this stuff. And it's part of one of their main agendas, which is pushing us along our pathway of spiritual evolution, because we've become technologically advanced a little too quickly, and we're abusing our planet and ourselves, and they're trying to catch us up spiritually. And that is a huge agenda. So experiencers, by and large, will have definite, very spiritual experiences in which they wake people up to all of this and will pull you out of your body or put you in a place and change you into an orb and show you all kinds of stuff. The light that's talked about by near-death experiencers, they will put people into that. This, I think, is what's going on in that particular room. It's sort of their way of technologically introducing people to the other side.
Yeah, great interpretation. That I have an afterlife vision where it's just insane. It's insane. I can't even tell anybody. I can only tell people who are slightly have awareness of this stuff. But they showed me the death of my last life. So the one that I had before this body, and then its progression going into this life. And so I watched this whole process, and they were showing me that they're there. That's kind of part of it too, that they interact in those realms, whatever that realm is, the afterlife realm. I have no words for it. They're there, and they can interact with beings and spirits or whatever you are in that state.
Yeah. I told you all this was connected past lives. I'm telling you.
Yeah, it is. And they are, you got it. And for them, it's just kind of basic. It's just basic, information for them at whatever state that they're in or level that they're in. And so they're, you got it. And it's a room that allowed this to occur. And it's just the most insane thing. And I'm just searching for people who have any kind of similar encounters. And then closer to the end of my contact events, I have on board crafts. I'm interacting with humans who have also gone to this room, and we've all kind of had we're all in a similar program. And this room was designed to kind of give us some kind of experience, and then they watched how it interacted with our worlds. And it's just so that's really interesting. I'm happy to you have some kind of reference here. That's really great.
Yeah, there are people who describe this room and will have virtual reality events played before them where ETs test their emotions.
I've heard this. Yeah.
I think this is why a craft can change shape, or like they can dress it up as a living room or however they want. Because when you're on the other side, you can do that. You can create things with your consciousness. It's all about consciousness.
Yeah.
These UFOs are driven by consciousness. These craft are conscious.
Yeah. I was explaining to someone, I guess those are the words that are coming through now, I think Lou Elizondo actually said this, not, the Pentagon guy. He's saying that, this is about consciousness. And so people are asking what that means. And that's what I'm leaning towards, is the craft or consciousness. So it's going to know what you spiritually need to grow. So if the craft will be close to you if that's what you need. And I don't know, it interacts with this kind of like spiritual side to the individual. It's just such a strange feature to all this, and very, very fascinating. And so very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Just added something to the chat on this topic, just to not take up the talk. Mainly for Jeff, but others.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, I just sent a message in chat. You check the Zoom chat.
Will do. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else?
I just wanted to mention that Vitko Novi's book, 100 Hours with Extraterrestrials, mentions that the extraterrestrials were around the crater. Well, now it's a crater, but at that time it was a city, and they knew that a humongous earthquake was going to happen in 1960. And that was one of the reasons they contacted, the Apunians contacted Vitko Novi. They wanted him to go to the government and tell the government to reinforce the area and to evacuate people, to start getting people out of the area. And they just thought he was crazy. He almost got put away in an insane asylum for saying these things. I think now when people get warned, if you were to say, oh, they're going, the Twin Towers are going to be hit, they would think that you're the terrorist. So sometimes these messages, we can only tell each other. It's not really like a two-way street where we can tell the government things and they don't think that we're the terrorist, if we get warnings about stuff. I saw that in the Apunian books, that often actually he got warnings about things. And he just stopped telling the government. He just started having sessions with people in his living room and libraries and different places where he would tell people. And that's pretty much what we're doing, I think, now, right? We're not really telling the government our concerns. Right?
There was a contactee from California, Clarissa Bernhard, who was taken because she was going on the radio and predicting earthquakes, and the ETs took her and said, "We are very interested in your ability to predict earthquakes. How do you do that?"
Right. Oh, God.
It was interesting.
Brian, do you have anything you want to say about Grays? Because now's your
that was my main question about, I think with Edwards Air Force Base, we're getting in, you can't get out. So it's like Hotel California. No, that was my main question.
That's good.
Just like all the cases, yeah. Maybe a question of the why and the how. What does it mean to you, Preston? Well, why is this happening? I guess you said you feel they have a beneficial intention, the aliens, towards mankind.
Yeah, I think there's an enormous number of ETs out there. It's a very large universe. The number of encounters is far, far greater than that's being publicly reported. as near as I can tell, our relationship to them is much closer. I think they look upon us as, their children to a certain extent. I doubt we evolved here on Earth like we think we did. I mean, there's human-looking ETs out there, and contact is going on a massive, massive scale. Some contactees I've interviewed believe everyone has some level of contact, and I can't, rule that out, because there does seem to be a general progression towards a better society throughout history. I don't know. It's very interesting. I think we are moving towards open official contact at some point. I can't say that.
Actually, I had another question, and that was about the fact that the Greys can't reproduce themselves, or they're trying to get that back. A lot of people have said that, and that tends to be my feeling about it from everything that I've read. That they've lost certain abilities, and that's one of the reasons why they're doing the hybridization programs and genetics in general. Do you get a lot of that in the cases that you've taken on that you haven't even mentioned to us here, Preston?
Yes.
Where many people have said that to you in regards to them?
Yep. Men and women are often have this experience. Genetic material is taken. They're shown their hybrid babies. Talked to a number of them who've seen their hybrid children who are full grown. This is still happening with this lady I'm currently interviewing. She told me recently, she says, you're probably going to start seeing less of this because this program that they've been on has been largely successful, and they are able to reproduce for the most part on their own. I don't know if that's true or not, because each case is unique. But that's absolutely something that turns up over and over again in any book I've ever written about people who are having extensive contact. There's multiple cases with the hybrid babies. They've got all kinds of agendas. A major agenda is the hybrid babies. One is to wake people up spiritually. One is to get us off fossil fuels. One is to warn us about environmental disasters and nuclear proliferation. They're mining our metals. There's no doubt about that. I did a whole study of UFOs over mines. They've got agenda after agenda after agenda. And there's a wide variety of ETs. They're all in contact with each other. There is, near as I can tell, no galactic federation a la Star Trek. They don't need it. They don't have money. They don't have crime. Their society is very structured, very fair, no sexual discrimination, no discrimination of any kind. It's very scientific oriented.
So are all ETs sort of in harmony with each other, like what they're called, the tall whites and the grays and the blues? And
for the most part, I've searched for this. There are a few books out there which describe some events of ETs being hostile towards each other, but they're very hard to find. I think one book that did mention that was Encounter at Buff Ledge by Walter Webb, which I would absolutely recommend. Another great book that should be far more well known than it is. But yeah, I rarely hear that.
Encounter off Edge? Is that what you said?
Encounter at Buff Ledge here. I'm writing it down in the chat. By Walter Webb. Yeah, check this book out. I love it. Oh, not Buff Ledge, Bluff. So yeah, Bluff, not Buff.
SJ, you have a question?
Yeah, of all the cases that you've compiled, what would you say are some kind of common entities that you see most frequently in all these cases?
By far, it would be the 5 foot tall grays, 4 to 5 foot tall grays, as they're classically described. But there's a wide variety of grays. They have the same variation in their race that we as humans do. So they're not all gray. Some are very white skinned. Some are much darker. Some are bluish. Some are greenish, yellowish, all of it. They have slight variations in their eyes, their facial features. Some have larger noses, some have bigger lips. Their heads vary in size. But Yeah, these sort of mid-sized grays are the most common. There's little short 3-foot tall grays, which are very commonly described, which are probably androids, AIs, something along those lines. But there are tall whites as well, or perhaps hybrids. Most common is grays. After that, it would be probably a tie between human-looking and praying mantis. Then I would say those short blue guys and strange humanoids of all kinds, often tall, but not always. I mean, hairy dwarfs, very tall humanoids, light beings, almost always humanoid. There is, I think, less than a handful of cases involving, squid-like creatures or blobs or this sort of thing, but they're almost always humanoid. Every case I have investigated has been humanoid. Robotic, that turns out. Even the robotic cases are, however, often anthropomorphic. So it's very interesting. It's very Star Trek-like.
I have a question about the memories and just what your experience is here. So you mentioned you actually have one case in your presentation of someone who didn't know his entire life, and that's me. So at the age of 41, it kind of all busted out, and it really was a prolific. I had a strange, weird experience happen in my 20s, and it was this spiritual experience for me. It was kind of like a self-awakening, spiritual enlightenment that where I saw light coming out of my cells of my body, and it was profound, so extreme that I got traumatized from it. So it was not some trippy headspace I was in. It was something that actually altered my body, and I had no idea what it was. And it was coupled with this kind of book that I'd read. So I kind of just went with it, and I ended up traveling and kind of living this hobo lifestyle and seeing all these stars in the sky, these lights in the sky. And sometimes they were close encounters, blue lights and red lights. And I had no idea. I didn't know I was having contact events. And so 20 years later, when the memories all bust out, what it ends up being is kind of this like split in time. So now that I have all the kind of awareness out of the contact events, I've done several regressions, multiple of the contact events. I'm stunned to realize what it was this kind of like, I was a different person. I was like the contact events started from childhood, and then they kind of had a gap. And then at 16, they kind of really start, and they say, we're going to do this bunch of stuff with you. And so it ends up being a person who's aware of the contact events. So I become aware of them when I'm in the crafts. Oh yeah, these guys. And it's like the memories come back, and it's clear to me. That's clear to me with the way the contact events move on. I was aware of the last contact event. So, but then it seals up. And then there's this guy who doesn't know anything is going on. And then that eventually gets weird drama and conflict when I start traveling, and the spiritual event happens because it's them who does it. And it's weird how it plays out about the guy. So it ends up being two people. It's like, it's a screwed up scenario. And I still, I don't know if that's anywhere. I don't know how this plays out with people's memories, but they really sealed things up, and it's a strange aspect of my story is the memory part of how they really just sealed it up. And I had subconscious impressions of the contact events, and I felt feelings from them, but nothing was in my brain. It was all kind of just sealed up, and they would move me forward and maybe change direction subconsciously, and the contact event would display that, and then they would just seal it up, and then I would make new choices in my traveling or whatever I was doing. Anyway, so just that whole thing about the sealing up of memories. The way that's kind of split up with two kind of personalities almost, it's really crazy. Have you heard of this before?
Absolutely. I mean, Whitley Strieber talked quite a bit about this. He says it was difficult for him because he had that same exact experience, and he's trying to have a UFO experience. It was like it was the first time. And he would have all this trauma that if they had allowed him, or he had allowed himself, because I think there's two sides to this, to remember, it would have been a lot easier for him. But I think they do this purposefully for a number of reasons, because they do have an agenda. They are trying to wake people up. They've got a life plan for them often. And remembering contact can really set off a person onto a completely different pathway.
Yeah.
And when they have to be on Earth and support themselves in a job and interact with people. And if you're full on remembering, it can be, overwhelming and become the focus of your life, which is not necessarily healthy or what they want for you. And yeah, I have had similar experiences myself with the out of body stuff, because I'll go out of body and suddenly all these memories come floating back. I'm like, shoot, I'm up here every night and now I remember.
Right.
And then I come back and I remember bits of it, but a lot of it leaves.
Right.
So I think this is actually part and parcel of it. And the problem is our minds are compartmentalized. We have our, if you look into the whole multiple personality phenomena, you can see how this, mechanically works.
Right.
We compartmentalize our consciousness, and we have all these different aspects to us that we often can't access. And through meditation, you can break down these barriers and remember your past lives. They're simultaneous lives probably, but also what you're doing each night on the other side, and all these UFO experiences that have been buried this is exactly what Don Anderson was talking about. He had his experience and boom, all of it comes rushing back. All these memories. So I think it's really important, and this is a big ET message, and certainly the message that pretty much all religions and spiritual masters agree upon is meditation.
Yeah.
And that will open you up and allow you to become what I would call a fully realized human being, or a real human. We're supposed to remain conscious tonight. We're all conscious on the other side every night. We're all walking around fully conscious, and then we come back here and we're fully conscious. We're living two separate lives, all of us. And then some people have another whole UFO life. So we're living multiple lives in a way. So I totally get what you're saying. And I think we need to work towards becoming fully realized human beings who do not suffer from profound amnesia. We're walking around like puppets a little bit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Automatic. Yeah. A lot of our tendencies and habits are grooves in our brain that we just keep repeating and repeating.
Yep. So meditation is definitely the key to all of this.
Nice.
Now you can make contact through meditation. You can have astral travel. You can learn about past lives. You can enhance your spiritual abilities. A lot of contactees have actually physically levitated.
Right.
Stephen Greer had that experience. Whitley Strieber, a lady I'm interviewing. I wrote a whole book on human levitation. That is a natural human ability. All of these are not superhuman powers. We can teleport. We can do telekinesis. We can do telepathy. We can do clairvoyance. This is the natural human state that I think the ETs are trying to wake us up to. It's just we're so profoundly physical. We're really down here in a pretty, rough dimension.
Can I say something? Can you hear me?
Yep.
What you're saying, Preston, is very true. I agree with you 100% that the UFOs or aliens, whatever, are trying to wake us up. I think a lot of people are sleeping and not aware of their self, their abilities, and the world. We're too brainwashed and dominated by our governments about money, and that's why our world is falling apart. I think that they are here. That's why I see things, hear things, get reminded all the time that this is not just now. You know what I mean? This is not just, you aren't living in one dimension. There's
Right.
more to it. And I don't know how to explain what I'm trying to say, but I agree with what you're saying. Yeah. And where do I buy your book from?
Well, you can read excerpts and stuff and see all my books on my website. If you just
Okay.
search engine my name, it'll take you there. And they're on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and other online websites. Bookstores too, if you can find one. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just
My
look it
stuff
up.
is definitely easily accessible.
Google your name on the internet, and then it will take me maybe to a site where I can buy your book?
Amazon would probably be the best place.
Oh, Amazon. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Go ahead, SJ.
One more question. So I come from a tribe where we used to perform like skull elongation back in the day, as part of like a practice. I think like usually it was typically like people who were higher up in our tribe. I was wondering if you've ever heard cases of entities with elongated skulls.
One or two. One lady comes to mind. I call her Wendy. She's now in Australia. She described that the ETs looked very much like Nefertiti type beings with that elongated skull. Yeah, but I can't say that I've heard that a lot. No.
SJ, my main gray has an elongated skull, an elongated cone. And she's the main one I interact with throughout my strange thing. And yeah, she has a large elongated cone, and she's a 4 foot tall gray alien. So you were talking about all the variations of grays, Preston. Yeah, I haven't heard of this, though I've seen a drawing of it in Richard Dolan's book. He has a drawing of a gray that looked pretty close to mine, and it just has a big kind of large head going back. Yeah.
Yeah, this is why I think it's so important for people to come forward and share, because if you're having that experience, you can bet someone else is.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Any more questions, anybody? Mimi, how you doing with time there, Mimi? You recording everything?
Oh, I'm recording everything. Yeah. And I'm absolutely fascinated. If time is fine, if Preston can stay. I was going somewhere, but I've told them I'll be late, so that's fine. As long as people have questions, we can stay on.
Yeah, Preston, would you ever come back to us? It looked like we had to cut you short almost. Is it like you look like you had tons there? So we would love to have you back. In a month or two, that would be so fantastic.
Yeah, of course, anytime. I did a whole book on schoolyard UFO encounters. Oh, that's fascinating.
Oh, this is this is so great. So great. You have all this material. Yeah, fantastic.
One on healings. I did a book on onboard UFO encounters. I didn't even touch that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Those are some crazy cases. Yeah, anytime. You got it.
That's great.
Excellent.
Preston. Fantastic.
Well, we definitely will have you back, and I'll write to you, and we'll do some dates that you can.
All right.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah.
The first time that I ever heard about you was the schoolyard UFO thing. I saw that there was a documentary made about it.
Talking about the Zimbabwe one, right, Nini?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that's out yet. The aerial phenomena. I'm waiting for it.
They talk to all the children who are now grown up.
Yeah, I know John Mack did put some short videos out, but Randall Nickerson did a 2 hour, I think it's 2 hours, feature length documentary on that, which is supposed to be released shortly. I'm very excited about that. And I know that, of course, there's Shane Ryan, who's putting together something on the Westall schoolyard encounter in Melbourne, Australia.
Right.
But boy, schoolyards, whew, I can talk for 2 hours on that. Don't get me started.
Very fascinating. Very fascinating.
Yeah, the Australian one is also very very interesting, because the government completely scrubbed it. Yeah. So there was, but
they tried.
Yeah, right. But fortunately, there was a journalist from the U.S. that had gone there, and he's popped out, and he has all kinds of documentation and stuff. So they weren't able to scrub it completely.
Yep, it's a tip of the iceberg. I've got over 100 cases.
Wow.
That's so fascinating. Kevin, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I was wondering about, Preston, your encounters or experience or knowledge about the connection between UFOs and plants. So there's crop circles. I didn't know if there's just what you had to say about that topic.
Yeah, I can't say I'm a crop circle researcher. I followed it. I think it probably is UFO entities doing it, though if you look at it real closely, there's not a really good, strong connection that would prove that. But I've certainly looked at UFO plant encounters. I did a whole chapter on that in one of my books, the Not From Here series, which is all about the more unusual sort of outlying cases, which I called extraterrestrial gardeners, because they are seen all over the planet picking flowers. In the Maurice Mass case in France, where they were stealing his lavender plants. There was a case in Brazil where they stripped all the leaves off of this lady's philodendron, the split leaf philodendron, a Swiss cheese plant, which is a medicinal plant. And many, many cases like this where they are taking plants. There was a case where they abducted a cactus in Arizona, just took it. And I know people, John Mack talks about a case where a lady was taken on board a UFO and into an arboretum, a pine forest. Artie Six Killer Clark, one of my favorite new researchers out there, has written 3, maybe 4 books. Also talks about cases where people were taken on board UFOs and saw fruit trees and arboretum. So they are studying plants. There are cases where they've sent down beams of light on plants and accelerated their growth. That happened to one lady in her garden. I think it was in England. I'd have to look that up where it was, but it tripled the growth of her plants overnight. And boy, were her neighbors freaked out. They're like, what kind of fertilizer are you using? She didn't want to say, well, a UFO had hovered over her backyard and sent on a beam of light. One guy was growing carrots in his trailer. Beam of light came down and woke up the next morning. The carrot roots were 3 feet long, spreading across the floor of his trailer. They can accelerate growth. I think this is partly to how they heal people, is they're using what our own body's natural processes, but are changing time and taking those cells and pushing them through time, through the healing process or the growth process. Travis Walton case talks about, accelerated growth where the UFO hovered in his case. This is something that turns up again and again. Jacques Vallée's got a number of cases involving accelerated growth. Sometimes weird funguses and mushrooms and plants appear where UFO hovered that are not native to the area. There is quite a bit of research that is just waiting to be done with the whole UFO plant connection, for sure. And animals, for that matter. They're taking animals. People have seen alien zoos. Oh, man. Yeah. There's quite a bit of research that's just begging to be done in this field.
Sorry, could you repeat? You said it was Not From Here, a chapter Not From Here.
Yeah, I wrote 3 books, Not From Here, volumes 1, 2, and 3. They're all excerpted on my website if you want to see, which particular aspect you're looking for. But I cover various unusual patterns in UFO encounters, like UFOs are hovering over graveyards or prisons or mines, or plants and animals, cases involving ETs calling people up on the telephone, which is surprisingly common. I mean, that shocked me. And I only looked into it because I had a case myself and I thought I was out of my mind. But no, Bud Hopkins had a case.
Yeah, I have my own case. I was at Stonehenge with my sister, and going back to the bus, I looked across the highway and I told her that would be a good spot for a crop circle. And the same afternoon, the big Julia said crop circle had appeared.
Wow. Amazing.
I don't know who is listening or who is doing it.
Where was this? Where did that occur?
I was at Stonehenge.
Stonehenge.
Oh, Stonehenge. Oh, yeah. Okay, I thought you were saying it was a different. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's a number of cases where crop circles are directly connected to conscious meditation.
Yeah, if I can just come in there, I was actually one of the first investigators into that Juliet set at Stonehenge,
Oh,
and a pilot had flown over it apparently 15 minutes before and seen nothing there, and he flew back over, and there it was. So, you know, we had the pilot's testimony. Apparently, a lot of people had pulled their cars over as well and suddenly seen it at the same time as well. So it was an incredible formation.
yeah, we were there about 11:30 in the morning, going back to the bus, going on to Bath and then back to London.
Perhaps it was your fault then, Rolf. You manifested it out there.
Well,
You
it
picked
must
up on
be, it must be, but I didn't have any formation in my mind. Just, you know, just that I told my sister it'd be a good spot. And I think that's the first time a crop circle happened near Stonehenge.
Yeah, I believe that you're probably right. That was the first one, because it was so close to Stonehenge that you would have thought, with a number of people who frequent that site, that they would and stay overnight camping over there, that people would have seen it, and it would have, you know, we had the testimony of the pilot who said that it wasn't there, and then 15 minutes later it was there.
Yeah.
So good one.
That was July 7, 96.
Yeah.
So there was
I
the
remember.
reports of orbs around the field, and fields for, I don't know about that particular case, but many other cases. Were there any reports of orbs for the ones that you were talking about?
Well,
You-
I don't know about in that particular circle, but I've actually witnessed the aerial phenomena over the fields where crop circles have appeared. I've seen orbs that have interacted with each other, and it was a fantastic display. I was the only witness to it. It was late at night, and I was in my car driving home, but I did see them over the field, and it was a fantastic experience to see that. I didn't get it on video, unfortunately. It happened too quickly, and then it was gone.
But then there are crop circles that resulted in that, or?
Crop circles were always in the field on the opposite side of the road, and occasionally crop circles have appeared in the field where I saw those objects. I saw them at the peak of a hill, though, so the crop circles usually appeared a little bit further down in the valley. And in fact, one of the crop circles there was the largest crop circle I think that's ever been reported, just below the field where I saw those balls of light. But yeah, Preston, I just wanted to mention as well about the schoolyard encounters. There's the famous case in the UK, perhaps you covered it, the Broadhaven one in Wales, part of the Welsh Triangle. Did you cover that one?
Of course, yeah. That's one of the top 10 for sure.
Yeah, and I have to say that I believe that maybe there was a schoolyard encounter that happened to me as a child as well. Very strange events of that day. So I think that there may have been some sort of schoolyard encounter that I witnessed at some stage as well.
Well, yeah, I'd love to hear more about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Want to email me, because I'm getting more cases. I'm gonna have to do a whole rewrite on that book. Man, oh man.
Yeah, you keep them coming, and I'm really glad to hear that you're booked again to come to speak to us again. It's going to be really good. I've got to turn and run now, but thank you very much for a very good evening, and it's been excellent. Well done. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks
Ian.
everyone.
Thanks
Take
for
care. Bye,
coming.
everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
Awesome. See ya.
Okay, bye. Preston, I wanted to ask you, which was your first book, your very first book that you wrote?
It's kind of a trick question, because the first one I wrote took a long time to get published and bombed. Never made it into bookstores. It's called 1 in 40, the UFO Epidemic, which you can actually find. I wouldn't recommend it. It's got some weird misspellings. It wasn't edited well. I'm unhappy with the publisher.
Mm.
But yeah, it's got some interesting cases in it for sure. My first book that was actually published was UFO Healings, which I have since reissued and is now a 500-page book with 300 cases. Initially, there was 100, but covered cases of people who have been physically healed as a result of an encounter, which I was going to be an article. I knew of a few cases, one from Jacques Vallée, another from Ralph and Judy Bloom. There were a few famous cases in the literature. I was going to write an article because I interviewed a lady who had been healed of a cyst. And I found over 30 cases and then buckled down and got over 100. And since then, yeah, quite a few more. Boy, that is definitely one of their main agendas. I can say that without reservation. They are healing people in large numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great to know.
I'll type it into healing.
If they can teach
Power
us how to do
of
it.
UFOs. Yeah, they do. I put a whole chapter on that because that is one thing they do quite a bit. They teach people how to heal. I covered that in one of these cases, actually. Evelyn from Ontario, Canada, had that experience. They taught her how to do hands-on healing.
Right.
I have one more question. I think you said at least some UFOs are powered by electromagnetism. But then you also said they are controlled by intention.
Correct.
Can you enlarge on that?
Yeah, certainly I can. It's not unusual for people to be, when they're taken on board and don't have a strong fear reaction and don't have their memories wiped and paralyzed, if they react in a way that is, calm, they're often taken to the engine room and taught how to fly the craft or even allowed to fly it. But by and large, these are people who are taught that these craft are flown through a process of empathy or telepathic connection with the craft itself, who's also conscious, which is interesting to me because there are a number of whistleblower accounts where UFOs have been allegedly recovered by various military, and they open them up and there's no engine inside, and they can't figure out how these things fly, which is because it requires someone who has profound psychic ability to be able to do it. So that does seem to be a pattern that turns up in case after case after case. There are a few that do involve joysticks, as we would see in a video game type thing. But by and large, it's all about consciousness, and you're given coordinates mentally, and you project there. It's very much related to our own psychic abilities, and that's how the ETs fly it, because they're very powerfully mentally, psychically, spiritually. They're very, very advanced in their abilities to hypnotize people and do all the what we would think of as spiritual abilities. When people see ETs floating around, sometimes it does appear that they're using a beam of light, but others, no, they're just levitating because they have mastered that ability, which humans can do too. I did a whole video on this. Levitation is a real phenomena. This is all about consciousness, ultimately.
Yeah, that's what I had the question. I had 3 aliens in my room, and they were flying back out through the closed window. And I was wondering, they didn't make any movement. They were just gliding out.
Yep.
How do they know where they want to go? And I mean, was very strange.
Yeah. Well, we have that ability too. We just have to learn how to do it. Yeah, there are cases of mediums who have walked through solid walls. If we can raise our vibration to a certain extent, you can physically levitate and do all kinds of things. But that all is pretty spiritually advanced stuff.
Do you think there's groups doing that? Right.
Oh yeah.
There's groups trying these experiments.
100%. Yeah. Levitation has been proven in a laboratory setting. Hereward Carrington proved it. Baron Schrenk-Notzing. There have been a number of scientific experiments which levitation has been proved. And if you study it, again, I wrote a book on this and I pulled together the largest collection of cases I think that you can find. It is a worldwide cultural phenomenon that has been going on for thousands of years.
That's right. Yeah.
It's in every culture. And there are a group of people who are currently on this planet who are what we would consider to be fully enlightened immortals, who are fully realized human beings with the full range of psychic abilities, which they obtained through, yogic practices and meditation. Robert Monroe, the out-of-body guy, he met one. There's quite a bit of literature on this. It's really interesting. Yeah, there are absolutely very advanced people who have the ability to teleport, heal, levitate, telekinesis. And if you just research the vast literature on this, we get it very piecemeal. There will be little kids who levitated, or a lady who did telekinesis, or a young boy who had superhuman strength and was able to lift the car off of his father when he got crushed under it. We have all of these abilities.
Yeah, for sure. And we have documented cases for sure.
Yep.
That kind of strange science.
It's awesome what we can do. Oh, it's just glorious how unlimited and truly powerful we are. It's something very special to be human. And I think that's one of the reasons ETs are so obsessed with us. It is a glorious, amazing thing to be human, to be so low down into the physical plane and have all these emotions and still have profound psychic abilities to go out of body, to levitate, to have telekinesis and clairvoyance and precognition. They're very, very interested in that, in our emotions and our ability to feel. All of it.
Beautiful.
I had, you also mentioned somebody that had ringing in the ear, but only in one ear. I had a strange experience, and I think it was November 2020. I was watching Fox News. They were making fun of Biden, and they were reciting 3 of his, I don't know what you were calling, goofy sayings or whatever, trying to make fun of him. And so they numbered it 1, 2, and 3. So then the first one came up, and the big red number 1 was on the TV. My left ear started buzzing. And as soon as the number 1 disappeared, the buzzing stopped. And then they talked about number 2, a big number red 2 came on the screen, buzzing in my left ear again. And the same with number 3. Unfortunately, I was too slow. I should have maybe blocked my eyes to see whether it's still happening, and I've never seen anybody ever do that again. That was really, I wonder if they were doing some experiment with this, because the number 1 really didn't need to be that big, to just show that line that Biden apparently was saying.
Yeah, I've heard very similar stories. I mean, I talked about that in this presentation where the lady with the ring in their ears would usually occur when she was being intimate. Another guy in my book, Onboard UFO Encounters, Ramon, he said his ringing would begin whenever he was watching a particularly news story that was of profound importance, a disaster or something that would affect a lot of the world. His ringing would start. I think this is probably implants activating and them sort of checking it out.
Yeah.
I have this too.
I do have an implant. Yeah.
Yeah, I have the ringing in the right ear. as well too. Yeah,
Yeah.
and it happens in
I
time
had
with
to do
certain
the
thoughts.
left
Left, interesting.
range.
Yeah, and it's in. And I know that they can hear. That's the thing. I've had a friend try and see. I've been able to film UFOs, but then sometimes I see them way more often and they don't want to be filmed. And so I tried to bring a friend out and I said, okay, let's look at this together. Can you see what I see? And then immediately we started seeing all the stuff in the sky, like lights flickering and flashes and moving and then disappearing. But it would only happen when we were talking about alien DNA. It was very interesting. We had to talk about alien DNA. So we said, okay, let's talk about alien DNA and having alien DNA. And so then we'd start seeing them all over again. So they were listening. They could hear. They were very aware of what was going on in this very small area on the beach, while they were obviously, maybe over maybe 1,000 feet in the sky or something, right? Several thousand feet.
Yeah, the watchers, they are watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
I had another question for you, Preston. I'm an abductee, and I've had a lot of the experiences that you're talking about. So today's not about me, so I'm not going to go into that. But I did want to ask you, in these partnerships that you think that people are put together, right? People used to think that they were putting alien DNA into the human babies, and this doesn't look so much like that might be the big thing. It's more the other way around. But what do you think? Why do you think that people are put together? From your experience, what do people gain from it?
I think that I can only speculate. That last case I mentioned with the ET named Sen, she felt that she and her husband were brought together under extremely synchronistic circumstances. Bud Hopkins, there's a lot of cases
I have that too.
like this. And I think the ETs are doing it for, I have a couple speculations on that. One would be they're very much interested in genetics and bringing people together who can produce children who are going to be the kind of beings with optimum genetics to be spiritually evolved or intelligent or fulfill a certain agenda that the earth needs. I think it's largely that. I think it's partly because they are trying to help people. They want to bring, a person might be like Whitley Strieber talked about how he and his wife were brought together, and Anne Strieber, and she would really ground him. She kept him, she was not skeptical, but kept him with his feet on the ground. And I see this in quite a few cases where there's one person is the contactee and the other is like, don't go overboard. So they have a partner who's brought in to sort of help them through it. I think that might be part of it. But yeah, I think we're still very early in our research to all of this. This is largely historically unprecedented. It's pretty clear that ETs have been around forever, millennia, and have probably been intervening genetically. I'm not sure the hybrid baby phenomenon is new, but what is new is the modern age of UFOs and the large levels of landings and onboard experiences and the publicity and the information and all this coming forth. So we're in an area that's largely new to human experience. And we still got a lot of questions about our relationship with the ETs, but I feel like they are just doing their best to sort of guide things along. And they are intervening on a much grander scale than might be initially apparent.
Well, I feel like the whole UAP thing, the report that happened was kind of the green light for everybody to go ahead and, to go ahead and be able to speak out without ridicule and a lot of things. But I'm hoping that scientific research will be funded, out of this whole thing that came out, because we do need a lot of research, and for things to be believed in science, they have to be done scientifically.
Yeah, it's been done. The government has already done this. That whole report is complete lies. They know everything that's going on. They've scientifically studied this to the minutest detail. The best thing that came out of that whole disclosure was what I think you said. It woke people up and gave a green light and brought this to the mainstream.
Yeah.
I think they only did it because they were losing control of the phenomena. People were completely at the point now like, well, we know you're lying to us if you don't admit it. So I think they were dragged into this kicking and screaming, doing it only because they had to, or they would lose complete control and all credibility if they did not say at least something pointing towards the veracity of this phenomena.
Yeah, so when people talk about free energy now and things that were considered a lot more woo-woo, you know, even a year ago, I think that green light did happen. And it's like people are going, well, you know, maybe the aliens do have some knowledge and we should look into it. And, you know, I was really happy about that, even though we got no information, but I really was happy that we got the green light. Because I think a lot of things, good things have happened. I've seen a lot of panels with like 300 abductees that have followers. And, you know, I think I've seen you on a couple of them, you know, sort of raising consciousness things. And yeah, it's good.
Yeah, I'm happy too. It was nice to hear them say the word extraterrestrial.
Right.
Yeah. That must have been hard for them. You only have to investigate this phenomena for a month to realize what it is. So it's very disingenuous of them to say, oh, this might be a foreign power. Shut up.
Right.
What it is.
Yeah, that was interesting. Jeff, have we lost you?
No.
Still here.
Okay. Yeah, it's almost 2:00.
Yeah,
So,
sure.
On my part, I'd like to really thank Preston for coming.
Yeah.
And yeah, really, namaste. And we want you back for sure.
Hey, you got it. Anytime, just let me know. I'm there.
Yeah, we'll be in touch, Preston. Thank you so much. This has been great. Your wealth of knowledge it's invaluable to experiencers. So, and there's a bunch of us here, and of course, it's invaluable to everybody. But you know, as experiencers too, it's really helpful. So, thank you.
Hey, much appreciated. Yeah, had a blast.
Awesome.
Look forward to doing it again. Thanks.
You got it. You got it.
Thank you.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
I will say goodbye then.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
See you, Preston.
Bye, guys.
Bye.